again, India has witnessed a number of protests happening around the country. Thus, it brings us to a question that do we have a proper right to protest? And what is it all about? And today, in this video of Tarun IAS, we are going to discuss all about it. We all are witnessing farmers' protest, and on that matter, recently, Supreme Court said that it is okay to protest by an aggregated group of people, but roads should not be blocked. There was a petition which was filed by a resident of Noida. So this woman said that commuters are facing a lot of issues in traveling because of the protest. And answering to that question or that petition, the Supreme Court Judge Justice S.K. Kaul, in a two-bench judgment, said that we are not against the protest. It is the right of an individual to protest. But one should take care that it should not hamper the daily lives of the people. Similarly, speaking about more protests, last year, Parliament passed the Citizenship Amendment Act, the CAA, which was very popular. So that gave a rise to the massive protest by the people across the states and students across universities. Public protests are the hallmark of a free democratic society, whose logic demands the voice of the people should be heard by those in power, and decisions be reached after proper discussion and consultation. In order to participate in public protest, the right to freedom of speech and expression, association, and peaceful assembly are necessary. Now let's understand about that what is the significance of the right to protest. Firstly, right to protest is an essential element of democracy to bring about reforms and lead to the development of the country. Second, protesting against injustice is not only a constitutional right of the citizens, but also their moral duty. Third, active exercise of right to protest ensures people's role as watchdogs that constantly monitors government's acts and ensure fairness in them. Fourth, it is the biggest weapon of people when the government in a democratic country becomes unresponsive and refuses to listen to them. Now, let's talk about what is the right to free speech and peaceful assembly. The right to free speech and expression transforms into the right to freely express an opinion on the conduct of the government. The right to association is required to form associations for political purposes, for instance, to collectively challenge government decisions and to even aim peacefully and legally to displace the government, to not merely check abuse of power but to wrest power. The right to peaceful assembly allows political parties and citizenship bodies such as university-based student groups to question and object to acts of the government by demonstrations, agitations, and public meetings, to launch sustained protest movements. Democracies everywhere are founded on two core political rights. The first, the right of every citizen to freely elect their government, and when dissatisfied with its performance, to vote it out of power in a legitimately held election, which is under Article 326. Any form of public action to challenge the government's proposal or decision is also constitutionally legitimate as long as it is done peacefully. Any arbitrary restraint on the exercise of such rights, for instance imposing Section 144, shows the inability of the government to tolerate dissent. What are the constitutional provisions to right to protest? Let's know more about it. The right to protest peacefully is enshrined in the Indian Constitution's Article 19(1)(a), which guarantees the freedom of speech and expression. Article 19(1)(b), on the other hand, assures citizens the right to assemble peacefully without arms. Article 19(2) imposes reasonable restrictions on the right to assemble peacefully and without arms. These reasonable restrictions are imposed in the interest of the sovereignty and integrity of India and in the interest of the security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states, public order, decency or morality, or in relation to contempt of court, defamation or incitement to an offence. Let's talk about some major judgments which were given by Supreme Court on right to protest. First one was the Ramleela Maidan incident versus Home Secretary, Union of India 2012. In this, the Supreme Court had stated that citizens have a fundamental right to assembly and peaceful protest, which cannot be taken away by an arbitrary executive or legislative action. Second, Mazdoor Kisan Shakti Sangathan versus Union of India 2018. In this case, Supreme Court upheld the fundamental right to assembly and peacefully protest, but ordered it to be regulated in such a way that they do not cause inconvenience to residents from Jantar Mantar Road or the offices located there. Third being the Shaheen Bagh judgment. The court upheld the right to peaceful protest against a law, but made it clear that public ways and public spaces cannot be occupied, and that too indefinitely. The right to protest in a public place should be balanced with the right of the general public to move freely without hindrance. Fundamental rights do not live in isolation. The right of the protester has to be balanced with the right of the commuter and has to coexist in mutual respect. When we speak about the background of the Indian Constitution, it was formed by its anti-colonial struggle, within which the seeds of a political public sphere and democratic constitution were sown. The Indian people fought hard and long to publicly express their views on colonial policies and laws, to dissent from them, to shape minds and form public opinion against them, to speak to and against the government and also to challenge it. People not only signed writ petitions but staged dharnas, held large protest meetings, peaceful protests and demonstrations, and even, for instance, in Gandhi Satyagrah, they launched a civil disobedience movement. Protests have also offered points of inclusion and participation to the voices that are not part of the mainstream, as seen in the protest for creation of Andhra or the Chipko movement. All these protests make public as the watchdog of the government. People act as a watchdog and they constantly monitor the government's act, which provide feedback to the government and their policies, and actions after which the concerned government, through consultation, meetings and discussions, recognize and rectify its mistake. However, resorting to violence during the protest is a violation of a key fundamental duty of citizens, which is enumerated in Article 51A. The Constitution makes it as a fundamental duty of every citizen to safeguard public property and to abjure violence. Let's discuss about the challenges to right to protest. First, there is no specific law with respect to right to protest. Second, delineation of criteria is hard. It is actually very difficult to lay down certain criteria that what should be kept in mind and what not. Like public property should not be damaged, it should not affect the citizens, etc. These are some of the points, but again, laying down rules is very difficult because every point could be subjective in nature. Third, freedom of expressions with restrictions. Yes, it is difficult to identify and understand that what kind of freedom of expression is there if there are restrictions to it. The right of citizens to protest and gather peacefully without arms is a fundamental aspect of India's democracy. While it is also the obligation of the government to protect civilians from violent protest, certain essential principles need to be kept in mind. The right to protest is one of the core principles on which democracy survives and it thrives. However, when a protest turns violent, as seen in some places in recent protests, it defeats the very purpose of the protest. While enjoying the rights, one must adhere to one's duties and responsibilities in a democratic society. So, this was all about this topic of right to protest. And if you have liked the video, don't forget to like, share and subscribe. And also, don't forget to hit the bell icon to keep yourself updated and notified with the latest videos. Thank you.